You keep referring to things which are outside sensory experience being unproven. So that if you can't see something, if you can't observe it, then you can't know it. And so my question is, if you are working on the assumption that all knowledge is based upon empirical experience, is your thesis that all knowledge is based on empirical experience itself based on empirical experience? Is that an observational claim? On what basis do you know that all knowledge is limited to what you can physically encounter in the empirical world?
Because I don't restrict all knowledge to what I can encounter in the physical world. I restrict it to all knowledge that can be by inference derived from the empirical world. To say that a supernatural being exists outside the universe and that the universe is sustained on that breaks the chain of command of empirical causation. But to say, for instance, that subatomic particles exist and that microcosmic subatomic particles exist is an extension of trying to determine the components of larger macrocosmic entities. But even though neutrinos and neutrons, electrons, and protons escape the human eye, they are inferable along the same causal chain of command as are the larger objects that they constitute. However, unlike microscopic entities, the notion of a God that is transcendent to and outside the universe and actually leaps away from that very causal chain of command, that is something which is not empirically inferable from the evidence available to us. So things don't have to be seen if there is a causal chain that can lead to their inference, as, for instance, viruses. We can't see them, but we see that they are in a continuum along the same chain of command of causal events. But to go outside the universe and say God stands to the universe as an atom stands to this wooden podium, I believe is not analogous, because God is outside the causal chain and the reasoning does not empirically follow.
We have heard Mr. Tabash claim that all knowledge is either by direct observation, or he said, as though he were answering my question, he didn't. It's either direct observation, he said, or it's empirically inferable. That is, it's something you can infer from your direct observations. But don't you see that the claim that all knowledge is observational or based on empirical inference is itself a claim that's not observational, nor is it based on empirical inference. No number of observation reports from people in the world will logically infer, will bring down the conclusion that all knowledge is restricted to observation. That is a self-refuting claim. And our opponent here tonight hasn't even thought through his worldview enough to realize that. He's stepped into this, and now, you see, he doesn't know any of the things that he has claimed tonight whatsoever because he hasn't proved them by observation. Notice that he claimed there can't be a hell because that's just too preposterous. Oh, did he observe that it's too preposterous? Now, on the one hand, you have an opponent here who says you only know what's based on observation or by inference from it, and then you have him making all sorts of claims that have nothing to do with observation, and no attempt is even made to make them observational. So you see, he contradicts himself in the very process of trying to defend his atheism.